Hi guys, and welcome back to another video here on David's PC channel. This video is the second part of the series Introduction to Blender, and in this video itself I'm going to show you how to model the scene you see right here. And then in the upcoming video, the third part, I would show you, how to add basic materials to the different buildings and possibly even the landscape. And now I want to get this out straight ahead that this is by no means supposed to be photorealistic or extremely pretty or anything like that. It's just meant to be a scene where you can use different meshes and different modifying tools, and I'm going to show you how to use them so you can work on your own projects and you know the skills for upcoming tutorials or different objects that we're going to be doing. So pretty much let's just keep this as a reference. You know, there's kind of like a dome shaped building with a foundation. There's kind of like a tower with pulled out floors and kind of like a radio thing in the top. And then there's just a basic tower with a circular base and then kind of like a platform or kind of like a turning restaurant or something like that. And I'm going to show you how to create all these objects. So let's get to it. Jump straight into Blender. And what you can see is I've upgraded to version 2.63.14. You know, not that it makes a big difference, but just that it's said. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to get rid of everything by just hitting A and then deleting. And we're going to jump into creating a large plane, which is going to be our base, our landscape, which you can see right here. You know, there's kind of like a hill. So that's what we're going to do. And the way you do that is there's two ways you can modify a face like this, because right now if we jump in edit mode we can see it only has 4 vertices, so there's not a whole lot we can do with it. But now by just hitting W for getting like special options, we can subdivide it by a couple of times. We can always, for each action there's always more options here in the bottom left hand corner. So we just, I don't know, subdivide it 4 times, then just do that again, because this way we get many more subdivides until we know we have a relatively dense mesh. We subdivide it 1 more time, and here we go. Any more than this might actually start to get laggy, and especially because I'm using my laptop and not my desktop machine, you know, we are going to run into maybe some lag. So sorry about that, but mainly in the next video with when it comes to rendering. But for now we should be fine with about this many vertices. Jump out of edit mode, we can see nothing has changed. But now there's this feature called proportional editing, which means if, let's say this is turned off right now, just moving this with G up the Z axis, we just create one simple kind of like a pyramid nasty kind of thing. Just undo that. And now let's enable proportional editing, and you can do this by either going down here, hitting this, and then clicking enable, and then the mode, or by simply hitting O. By hitting O, you can do the same thing. So let's actually just keep with the default smooth fall off, and you'll see what this means in a second. So let's just grab a random vertex again, move it up the Z axis, and you can see that it actually moves a couple of vertices next to that. And by using a scroll wheel on your mouse, you can select how many or how big the influence space is. And now if we look, for example, we'll go into orthographic, view, and for some reason that's not working. Never mind. Okay, actually, good that this failure happened to me in a way. If you're on a laptop and you don't have a number pad, which is the case with a laptop, you can actually go to File and User Preferences, go to Input, and here on the left hand side you can click on Emulate Number Pad. And what this means is it makes your keys 1 to 0 just above your keyboard. It emulates them as a number pad, so you can use them like your number pad. Hit 5 to go into orthographic view. And this is what I wanted. So you can see now that this fall off is relatively to here, the smooth one. If I now selected, well, if I undid this and I selected, let's say, a root and did the same thing again, you can see the fall off is differently. So just play around with it, but I think we're going to stick with smooth for now. Just go out of orthographic view. And as you can see, if we go back to the reference image, there's kind of a hill in the back and it smooths down to the front. So just to get that again, let's just grab the furthest back vertex and some like 2 along the edge here, because we're going to have our camera positioned about here. And let's just move these up, make the fall off slightly larger. And this will also move the bottom edge right here, but that's okay because as you can see it just creates kind of like a hillside in that sense. Let's just grab a vertex about here, move that up a little bit more with like a smaller radius of fall off, kind of like this maybe. And now also we can select a couple of vertices in the back here and just move these up again with a smaller fall off, so it kind of creates like peaks in a sense. And now when we zoom into one of these cracks, you can actually see the individual faces. So what we do to avoid this and actually make this smooth is by shading in a smooth way. And this is just over here on the left hand side in the object tools, which you can actually hide or pop up with T. So just by hitting smooth, you can see it immediately smooth these edges out. And there's still not any more mesh created. It's still the same, but this is what it was before: flat shading, smooth shading. So it does make a difference. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to jump into the second way we're going to modify this. And you could choose either or you can use both, like I'm going to do here. And it's called sculpt mode. So we know edit mode, we know object mode. There's one more mode which you can also toggle down here. Go into sculpt mode, and you'll get a brush-like cursor. And the way you can do this is you can modify the landscape. For example, let's just go like this, and you can immediately see it created this bulge. Now that's in a completely wrong place, and that doesn't really help us at all. But let's go for the grab brush, which basically you can grab vertices and just pull them up like so. But we're going to make the radius slightly bigger just on the left hand side here, and we're going to actually just draw this up a little bit, maybe give it some more diversity down here. Just the landscape, there's not really a whole lot to say besides make it look a little bit natural, you know. You can also pull down here a little bit, create kind of like a valley, you know, just something. And don't worry about these hard edges because we're going to be able to smooth those out with another brush in a second. Let's just get this about right. And this is, oopsie, that was wrong. And this can be far from perfect, and it is far from perfect. And now we just grab the second brush we're going to use, just smooth, and just kind of go over the whole thing, and you can immediately see it'll actually make all of the curves much smoother, which is much more realistic to the way nature works. You know, you never have these really sharp hills, little things, unless they're out of solid rock. But for now, it's just going to be like a landscape. Actually, now I want a little bit more diversity up here. So let's maybe grab this. Oops. Grab this a little bit, pull it up like so, and this hill a little bit. Let's just smooth that again, just until you're happy, you know. It doesn't have to be, and if you're following this tutorial, which I recommend if you're gonna want to use Blender more, you know, you can just do until you're satisfied, until you're happy with what you've created, and then just go with that. Okay, so now it kind of looks like there's 4 hills in a kind of asymmetrical arrangement, so let's get kind of rid of that. Yeah, I guess this is pretty good. I guess we can live with that. And what we'll do now is we'll actually add a camera by Shift A. Okay, never mind, we have to go into object mode, sorry. Shift A, and we just add a camera, and just move that up so you can see it. And let's say we want the camera to be positioned about here. So let's get our view to about where we want the camera. By pressing Control Alt 0, you can actually position the camera there. And then by holding or by pressing Shift F and then moving your mouse, you can move the camera or where the camera is looking at by simply moving the mouse. And all you need to have is the camera selected. You can also scroll, use the scroll wheel to scroll in and out. Oh, sorry. Let's move that back to the camera view with number pad 0. So, you know, kind of just get, move the camera down a little bit maybe. Let's just kind of get a view kind of similar to what we had here, you know, kind of with the hillside and everything. You can see that it's actually, it's much higher than what's the default camera, and we might have to change that later on as well if the buildings become quite tall. So now that we have the camera here, you can kind of see that if you look at the right edge, it looks very sharp. You can see that it just ends flat in the surface. If we look here, and we actually zoom into this, it's not extremely high resolution, but you can see kind of falls off, shades down a little bit. And the way you create this, the way you create that is by simply going back into here, going to edit mode, and then grabbing the outer vertices here and then moving them down. And you can actually still use proportional editing, just create the fall off very, very small, maybe like so. And then when you look, you have kind of like an edge like that, and that makes it appear much more three-dimensional to the camera. You can see now, if we zoom in here, it actually has a rounded edge. So that's kind of a trick to cheat in Blender or in computer-generated graphics or images, and it's really good to know tricks like that because it doesn't have to be real. You don't have to make a huge landscape. You can simply kind of cheat it. And you can see on the edge here now, but since we're not going to have the camera look at this, it doesn't really matter. So that's it for the landscape. So let's actually move the landscape to a different layer. And the way this works is Blender has many different layers just installed. It actually has 20 of those. So you can see 5 and then 2 groups of 10. And you can see the camera right now is on layer 5, which is actually strange. Let's just move that over here. And just by hitting M, you can move it to another layer, and by just shift clicking down here, you can view a certain layer or not view it. So not viewing the first one would get rid of the landscape, and not viewing this one will get rid of the camera. Let's actually move the landscape to the same layer as the camera, to the layer over here, and unselect that so we can focus on our first building. And the way we're going to create this building is by starting off with a cube. And just going into edit mode, you can now just by hitting Alt, you can select all the connected faces. And if it's something like this, it won't actually select the whole 4 vertices. So just by hitting Alt, then right clicking, and then by holding Shift to get the next edge, you can select them like so. Let's just move them way up. Actually, let's turn off proportional editing just by hitting O. Let's move them way up. So we have kind of like a tower style. Let's scale them down as well. So we have a slightly narrowing tip. Let's actually go down here again by hitting Alt and then Shift. Scale these up a little bit, and actually scale these up a little bit as well. Maybe move them up a little bit more. Just, you know, kind of like a building style. And now we want to create these kind of like extruded, expanded floors or windows or whatever they're going to be. By doing that, we add loop cuts, and this is basically just cutting this cube we have in half or in whatever proportions we want. And we get loop cuts by hitting Control R, like so, and you'll get a little pink cut. And once you have it on the edge, you can see you can do loop cuts in all different directions. Let's just get it here, and just by moving the mouse up and down, you can move where the loop cut's going to go. So we want the bottom to be clear and not have any of these moved out windows. And actually, I kind of placed that a little bit high. So we want to move it down along the edge. But if I now moved it down, it would create it, like a narrowed down version. So let's start right clicking, we get rid of that. We can actually get to an edge slide mode where it just slides this loop cut along this edge without creating the little the moved in loop cut when we move it down, just beginning by hitting Control E and then hitting selecting edge slide and then just moving it down. So let's just get it to about right there. Now we can add more loop cuts up here by scrolling. So you just scroll up and you get multiple loop cuts. It's pretty much simple as that. And now we just hit each loop cut one more time and just move it down so we have about an equal amount of space in between them. And now we can make them move out, blow them up. And we select each all the faces around them by going to face select mode down here, and then again hitting Alt and clicking on this edge, and it will select them all around. Now because it's a full loop cut, it will actually select them. We don't have to select the other side. And now you just hold Shift and then Alt again and right click on all the other ones, so we can select them all at the same time. Now we want to extrude them, and now you'll see extrude immediately gives us the option to move them up and down the z-axis, but we don't want that, so we just right click anywhere, and this will keep them selected. And now if we just scaled them up, we'd create a little funny thing looking like this. But we want to scale them up according to their own geometry and not by this middle point, which is kind of like the average of the center. So by we can extrude or move along according to their own origins by hitting Alt S, and that would move them out like so. Now you can see that it's still flat, which is good, because now once we scale them, it would do that again. But if we scale them with Alt S again, it would actually blow them up like so. So we just do that until we're happy, and we scale them up, and so we're pretty much good to go. Now all we want to do is add a little radio tower on the top, and we do that by using the same tools, just extruding this, scaling it down, so we kind of have a narrowed down tip here, like so. And then again, just like before, we add a loop cut like here, add a couple of loop cuts here. You know the deal. It's the exact same thing as before. The only thing we're going to not do this time is the last step that makes them puff up. Selecting the right ring would be of advantage. Extrude them first, right click anywhere, Alt scale them along their own origins, and just scale them out like so. And here we go, there's our little radio tower. And so let's just keep this on the layer 1 and just jump to layer 2 to get to the second building. Now the second building, we're going to use a combination of a sphere and a cube again to create the building. So let's just jump into here and grab a UV sphere. And now for this shape, we're actually going to go into orthographic mode or view, because we want to get rid of exactly half of this. We don't want the entire sphere. So we just we hit Z to go into wireframe mode, or this is pretty much the easiest way to select objects all the way through, because if I now went back to vertice mode and I wanted to select all of the vertices down here, I can use the box select tool by hitting B like box, and selecting them like so. And you can see that I only selected the ones on or visible to me. But if I go into wireframe mode and I do the same thing again, you can see I selected the ones all the way through. So let's just keep these selected and delete the vertices. And now we can just go back to the normal filled view. With Alt, mark the entire loop and hit F a single time to create a face. And this means that there's actually a filled bottom and not kind of like an open hemisphere. And now you can see though that it's very rough, and you'd think you can just hit smooth like before we did on the landscape and it'll make it perfect. But actually there's not enough mesh to allow that, because you can still see the edges and it's still sketchy. So there's a great modifier called subsurf modifier, and this is on the right hand side here. So just go into modifiers and just add a modifier and call it subdivision surface. And as soon as you start using modifiers, there's a higher risk of Blender crashing. And actually I should have saved this a while ago, so let's just do that now, catch up on that. Just call this tut02, save that, and now save regularly. But usually as soon as you start using modifiers, simulations, physics, and so on, Blender is more prone to crash. So just that's a good point to save. And what you can see now already is it becomes much smoother. And if I hit another view here, you can see it becomes even smoother. And the way this modifier works is it adds more mesh. And if I did simple, it would just create more mesh like this. If I hit Catmull Clark, it will actually smooth the entire shape. Now going back to the front view, you can see it really messed up the bottom. And the way we can solve this is by going into edit mode and just adding one loop cut and pulling it pretty far down, which just creates a much flatter ground. You could also trick it in a way in other ways to have it a sharper edge, but for now this is sufficient. And now we want, you know, the main building or the base of the building, so let's just add a cube. And now you can't see the other one, so just go into wireframe and you can see it now. Scale it up a little bit. Now just scale it down the z-axis until you think it's good. Move it down the z-axis. So the hemisphere is still oopsie, sorry, wrong key. Still slightly underneath, like so. So you can't see that kind of like rounded bottom edge. And actually, let's also select the bottom here and just move that up a little bit more, so it's more like a building in that sense. And now, if we want to join both of these together, you can see you join objects together by hitting Control J. So we just select them both, hit Control J, and whoa, what happened? So what happened is it applied this subsurface modifier to the bottom or to the cube. And once you start smoothing out a cube and the edges, well, it becomes this kind of like potato egg shaped thing. So undo that with Control Z. And what we want to do is we want to apply the modifier. It's technically a good practice to keep the modifiers active. That way you can hide them or show them or not render them if you want to like save on computing space or computing power. But for now, since it's not a large scene, we can do this anyway. So we just hit apply. You can actually see that now it has a lot more vertices than before. And since there's no more modifier, we can now safely, with Control J, join the objects. They're now one object, and there's no messed up cube in the bottom. And pretty much this is it for the second building. So let's jump to the third. And for the third, again, we're going to be mainly an orthographic view, and we're going to start off with a circle. And what you're going to see first is that it's going to be like an empty circle. There's going to be nothing inside, so we just hit F once to fill it. And then just for now, Alt to select the outer edge, E for extrude, and it automatically selects the z-axis. Just go, just move it up a little bit, and now hit X or delete for deleting objects or parts. But now we don't want to delete the vertices because that will get rid of the entire extrude. We don't want to delete the edges because the vertices selected the edges, but we can get rid of the face. What that makes is, or what this does is exactly this. It gets rid of the face in between. We still have the edges around. So now we just move into like an orthographic view like so. Go into wireframe mode because it's easiest to work with, and just scale it down, kind of creating like the base of a tower in that sense. Extrude it again, move it up the z-axis, and kind of just go with your instinct. You don't have to. There's not really a science to this. I mean, if you had reference images and all that, then that would be a different story, but we don't, so we can just kind of freestyle here. Again, move it up the z-axis. Let's move that up the z-axis a whole lot until we're about up here, and we want to create the platform. So again, we move it up the z-axis, scale it up a little bit, and kind of make it a smooth shape, just for all intents and purposes. Actually, like so, that it's kind of like okay, it doesn't show very nicely, but that it kind of smooths out like so. Then extrude this again. Then for the main cabin of the platform, then again the little scale down for the roof. Top of the cabin, let's make this slightly steeper as a roof. Actually, maybe add a loop cut here, scale this down so it kind of goes like so as the shape. And then again up here we use the same technique as for the first building with the fan out, kind of like a radio tower style. Just to do that again, actually we can scale this down a little bit more. Extrude it on the z-axis, kind of create a tower base up here, like so. Extrude it on the Z, make it quite tall, and again scale down the tip a little bit so we have kind of a cone shape a little bit. Add a loop cut, two more loop cuts here, and then it's the same old style. The only difference is that it's circles and not cubes. We again select the faces that go all around, like so. Extrude them once. Alt S to scale them on their own origin, and here we go, pretty much. And now what you'll notice is the top is still open, so we just hit up those vertices, hit F once, and here we go. And now you can see that it's very, very edgy in that sense. And so what we're going to do now is, instead of using the subsurface or the subdivision surface modifier, just called subsurf short, we can use the smooth mode. But if we hit smooth, you can see that, you know, some of the edges where we actually want there to be a kind of a proper edge just get smoothed out and just looks really bad. And the way you can avoid this is by adding more geometry. We're actually going to go out of orthographic mode, sorry, and we're going to add just a little bit more geometry to give it a little bit more definition. You can see the bottom edge already looks better. Let's just do the same thing for the top edge here, and then actually do that a lot for this edge. Ooh la la. Okay, a tip here, now you can see that by moving the mouse only a little bit, it moves the entire loop cut extremely quickly. By holding shift while moving the mouse, you can get much smoother movements, like so, and thus create these nicer, oopsie, move that along the z-axis, create these nicer cuts. Let's do the same thing up here we did in the bottom, just by adding some more definition, like so. Maybe here just a loop cut right in the middle will make it, will do the job. Again, hold shift, and you don't ever want to move the loop cut all the way to the other edge, because that eventually means that you have two overlapping edges, and if you're ever trying to move that edge again, then it's possible, or only a couple of vertices, it's possible that you select a couple of vertices from the one edge loop and the other from the other, and that just creates a whole nice little mess. Just avoid that by never going all the way like here, but just by leaving a little bit of edge that when zoomed in all the way, you can see the difference. Again, let's add an edge about here, another edge about there. You know, pretty much it's the same deal all around, just to add a little bit more definition. And it's all about partially exaggerating. And now here you can see we actually want this to be smooth. So what we can do now is by adding, actually that was wrong, adding a couple of loop cuts here, and then selecting the top and bottom, oopsie. By selecting these, you want to be careful when you select them that you actually select the correct ones. By selecting these four, hitting W, and then instead of subdivide, we hit smooth down here. It will actually smooth them out like so, which is great. And we can actually number times to smooth down here in the bottom again in the options. We can just select a couple of iterations and it'll make it smoother like this. You know, just add a little bit more definition up here. I'm sure you kind of get the drill by now. You know, you can tweak it. You can these loop cuts that we added for definition, you can actually scale those a little bit as well if you want to be, you know, really picky about it. And let's just add in between here, add 2 loop cuts each time, just to give that a little bit more definition. And let's add 2 loop cuts up here. And I guess we can call this tower done as well. And now if we go back to the reference image, we can actually see the tower looks relatively similar. This tower looks about okay, and the little dome figure building is also pretty similar. Now all we have to do is place them in the landscape, and now we can actually see we have all the buildings here, and they're completely out of scale, but that's okay because we can, you know, always change the scale of them. Let's actually get rid of all of these. Go to new layer, just add a cube, because you can see here that I have like foundations for all of them. They're concrete or, you know, whatever. And actually if we go to the materials, you can see I added a concrete texture, like an image texture to them. And I'm going to show you how to do that also in the next video. But for now, let's just create the foundations, and we're going to create cubes for all of them and not a circular one like here, because it actually stretches the material. And just for a basic UV texturing, we're going to skip that and just make it a cube, because that's simpler. So just scale that up and scale on the z-axis, so we have kind of like a cube like so. And then by shift D, you can create a copy of that. Just right click anywhere, and so now we have 3 individual copies. Just undo the move there, and now let's actually get back the other layers. So we have the landscape, we have this building, we have our tower, and we have our dome thingy right here. Oopsie, that was wrong. Where is our dome building? Here. Let's move that up. Yeah, so basically we want to make the scale right, so just scale this up a little bit, move it orthographic mode, going to 7. For top view, just get that about right. We have this building about over here, this one about here, and now we want to have to move them to about the correct level. But actually before that, we can just go into wireframe mode, grab the individual cubes and move them to where they should be. So we can scale them up accordingly and just make sure they're about in the middle. This one's actually pretty good. Grab another one, move it to about here. This one's pretty good as well. Move this one to about here, right in the middle. And then here, just scale that up a little bit as well. And then you want to move them up so they just about, and we're actually going to go into this view, so they just about touch the bottom of them, of the shape. You want to also do that here, like so. And the same thing over here. And where did that building go? All the way up here. Alright, fair enough. So now that we have all of these cubes together and foundation and everything, actually we're going to make this a little bit bigger even. Move it down a little bit more. Right about now. So I actually want to make, let's actually go to the camera. I want to make this building way smaller. Be like so. Make this one way bigger. And so now I can just move them down and just make sure that the foundation can sometimes kind of go underneath the landscape, but the buildings never should. And by just clicking both of them and then shift for selecting them both, we can select them like so. Move this one down as well. Now let's just go to the top view again, rotate them a little bit, so we have some diversity. And this is pretty much, using the good old tools. Moving this up a little bit more, like so. And then just moving this slightly. So we have just a little bit of diversity. And pretty much if we go into camera view now, you can actually see that, whoa, there's a big difference here. But nonetheless, you can get the point. But now we can't really fit everything yet. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually change the proportions of the camera, just kind of as a last step to this video. Actually, I'm going to have to move this down a little bit more. After I scaled it, it changed. Yeah, everything else is fine. Let's go to camera view again, select the camera. And now on the right hand side here, the only thing we've used so far is the modifiers. Let's just go to render settings. Make this all the way to 100 so it uses 100% of the resolution here. Let's just set this to maybe 1600 pixels in the height. And now again, using the same Shift F to move the camera, we can move it up like so. And unless I'm mistaken, this is pretty much what we have here. Just this one is rendered and this one is just the object. It's very similar. It's a slightly different building position and all of that. But so I guess thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next part where I'm going to show you how to add basic materials to these objects and getting used to ray trace render engines and explaining you kind of how they work and what they do. So thank you for watching and take care.